wasn't working this morning, but I did get PyCharm working. So, anybody have a Mac? It's running Catalina now. So, it was a major update. Changed. I've got to update some software now. Okay, so in Unit 5, well, let me go over first to MindTap. And if you want, I'm not going to go over the test again because I did it on Monday, and you can watch that video and I show you how to do the test, and then but I will grade your test. I'm not going to not grade them, but that will help you know if you got it right or not, if you want to go back after class and look at it. But I will have them graded before I leave this weekend, so probably this afternoon. But then in Module 3 is what we're going to be in inside of Canvas today. And so the Module 3 instructions tell you to read Unit 5 and take the Unit 5 test in MindTap. And you will see that if you panicked, because it did have October 14th as the due date, I went in and fixed that to October 21st, so that's next Monday, that you have to take the MindTap test. But we are going to cover a lot of what's in Unit 5 today. And then the instructions that I'll give you for next week, they will include working through the MindTap and another problem. So, but here also is the the Python, the guy with the backwards ball cap assigned to tutor. This is the assignment for loops that he does. And the thing, he really does one with while loop, which we're going to talk about today. And then you use the while loop doing the guessing game. And if you remember in the Head First book, we did the guessing game. So he does ones really similar to that, where we used a while loop in there. Then the for loops, which we might get to today, but it'll probably be in the instructions next week. But there's for loops and then an exponent function. And this is a built-in function that's part of Python. And we've already used a built-in function before. Does anybody remember what it was? We used it in the Head First book in the guessing game. Exponent function? Well, that's the one that's the new one here. Oops. That's the new one that's in this assignment. But then what's the one that we used in the Head First book that was part of Python? It was a built-in function. Generated numbers. What was it called?
Was the auto-gener or the random number?
Random. Random is the built-in function that we had already used. So it was one that we just had to import in. Remember, we had to have that import statement in there. So in this assignment, it tells you to complete all 4 tutorials, but the only ones that you have to do screenshots of and submit is the 2 the building a guessing game and the exponent function, okay? And you don't have to upload the Python, just the screenshots on this particular one, on these assignments here. Okay, so that's one of the things. And then we're going to, I have created that test 2 video that's from Monday that you can look out on YouTube and watch it if you want to see how test 2 was supposed to be done. And then before this module's finished, we will complete the Python in MindTap, and the links to all those are right below. But the thing also with loops that's so important is we can't do the next chapter unless you fully understand loops, which is the next chapter is arrays. And that is where, I believe that's the very next one. I think that's right. And you have to understand loops to be able to do arrays. And so that's something that we need to really, you need to do enough coding that you understand it. So today, also, Ryan brought up that I gave this assignment to my Monday class, and I said on the video that if you got it done before class today, that you got credit for it. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. But that wasn't really fair to this class, because if you didn't watch the Monday, although I've always told you to watch the Monday video before class on Wednesday, if you don't come to class, I guess you just don't do it. But I'm going to go ahead and extend this one where you could, I don't have to extend it. You just need, if you want to do it, you can do it. It's 10 points and you can put it in there for credit on it. But it's actually talking about a while loop with a sentinel value. And until you might remember us talking about that some, but that's what's covered in MindTap. So let me get logged in here again. Who remembers what a sentinel is? Anybody?
Like an ending value, right?
An ending value. So like used to in old procedural languages like COBOL and RPG, you had an end of file marker and it just would read records until it came to that marker and it knew it was at the end of the file. But with us, we're going to ask for input from the user until they enter some certain value that we're testing for. And when we test for that value, when it is equal to that value, then it will drop out of the loop. And so I think I have covered this before, but we're going to talk about it again, about the 3 things. I don't know why that did that. The 3 things that you have to do for a loop, and some of the things that we covered in the Monday video, you can go back and watch because I went over the first part of this chapter. So let me go here. Let me go down to. So what I covered on the Monday video is the advantages of looping, where you don't have to copy code numerous times. So a simple example of that, I show you in the video, is like if you wanted to go into Python and you wanted to print hello to the screen 4 times. Well, you could type it 4 times, or you could type it once with a loop counter and it would do the same thing. And let me show that. It's hard since you haven't watched that video to know what I'm talking about. Where did PyCharm go? I think I've got it in here already. Okay. Okay, so if we were going to print, I'm going to make another one, hello, let's see. You can go into PyCharm if you want, and if this helps you learn a little better, it's up to you. Let me show you. Okay, so if we were just wanting to print hello out one time, it just do hello, and then in Python you could run it. And there it is, print it out one time. Now, if we wanted, say, to print hello 4 times, we could come up here and we could, or let's say we're going to do it 5 times, then we could copy it in here however many times we wanted. I could actually leave it in that line, but that's kind of confusing, so we'll do it this way. Okay, and so now it's going to print hello out 5 times, right? And there it is. So if you are just doing a simple while loop, and it's we have 2 kinds of loops. We have a definite loop and an indefinite loop. Anybody read ahead to know what that is? Yeah. Okay, which one is a definite loop? Or what does it mean to have a definite loop?
It brings a certain amount of times based on what you tell it to.
Right. So you know going in, like this one will be a definite loop because I'm saying I want to print hello 5 times. Okay. it's an indefinite loop if it's controlled by a variable that we don't know how many times we want to go through when we first start the program, right?
In other words, loop continues on, right?
Yeah, until something happens. And that's the one that I give the assignment for in the Monday video, is to do one with a sentinel value, and we're going to look at it here real quick. So on this one, if I want to make it a definite loop, every loop, whether it's definite or indefinite, has three things that it has to have. It has to have an initialize step where it initializes the control variable. Then it has to have a test of the control variable, and then it has to alter the control variable. But what goes in the body of the loop can be whatever you want it to be. So here I'm going to say, I'm going to make a comment here to say a definite loop. And so I have to have three parts. So the first part, I'm going to set up a counter, and I'm going to call it count, and I'm going to set equal to 0. So that is my initialize step. All right. And so then I'm going to start my while loop, and it says while count is greater than 0. I may have to say greater than equal to. No, that's not what I want to say. As long as it's, how many times do I want it to print?
4.
I want it to go 5. So yes, I would say, so, well, isn't that 1, 2, 3, 4? Yeah, that's 5 times. All right. So I would say less than 5. Well, it's less than 5 because I'm starting with 0. So it should still print 5 times, right? Because it'll stop on 5. Let's see if this works. Okay, so what I want it to do is I want it to print hello. So I'm going to get rid of all of these. And what other step do I need? I have to alter it. Okay, so alter the count, right? So how would I do that? Count, I could say plus equals 1, or I could say count equals count plus 1, right? Same thing. That's just a shortcut. So now let's see what happens. So now if I go run, and there it is. It's still printed out 5 times. And see, if I would have started this with a 1, what would I have to do to get it to go 5 times?
Less than 6.
Less than 6, or I could say less than or equal to 5. Either way. But there's always one way in a comparison. But that's what I'd have to do to get 5 times, because in programming, normally you start a count with 0, and then when we get to arrays, you have to understand that 0, although you were always taught it was nothing, it really is a placeholder. 0 is something. And the numbers 0 to 9 are our decimal numbers. 1, 0, which we call 10, is really just a bundle of, it's not a new number. It's starting over again, right? So we have 1 set of 10, is what that means. All right, so this one is the one that is a definite loop. So now if I wanted to, and this would be alter. Okay, so now if I wanted to do one that was a sentinel value, which means that I want to ask the user to tell me if they want to keep running the loop and keep printing hello. Here's the one that if you can get it to work, then that's what you can upload in there. This is a variable called should continue. So I'm going to ask the user, do you want to continue? Yes or no. While should continue is the same as the string y, then print hello. So I can do it, and then here's where I have to alter it. Instead of adding to a counter, I have to say should continue. Let's ask, do you want to keep continuing? Yes or no? If you say yes, it's going to go back through there and print hello again. So with this, it's indefinite how many times we're going to print it. It's up to the user. So the programmer doesn't know. So if I go here and I run this one. Oh, that's a different one. I'm sorry. This one is called run this one. Okay, do you want to continue? So let's say yes. Hello. Do you want to continue? In PyCharm it does weird. Yes. So it's going to keep doing it as long as I put in a Y. So when I put in an N, it should stop, right? And it did. Because I have all three parts. So every time I make a loop, I can have as many statements in this body as I want. I could say, okay, let's go in here. Oops, I need to do that. Okay, so let's go in here and also ask a name of the user. So we'll say equals input. I probably want it outside the loop. What is your name? And so it's going to print this every time. What is your name? And then I can say print hello plus string name. So now if I run it, let's see what happens. Yes, continue. Oops. Oh, I did something wrong there. I didn't have my cursor down here, right? Yes. What is your name? And there it printed, what is your name? And then it says hello, because I didn't put a space in there. Do you want to continue? Yes, so it's going to keep asking me a name. Let's just say John. Hello, John. Do you want to continue? No. So see, I can put as many statements in the body here as I want, but in the loop, I need to always have, for a loop to work, I need the initialize step of my control variable. Maybe a count, it may be another variable. And I need to have my test of my loop, and then I need to alter the control variable, okay?
On that one, I have a question.
Okay.
On, the initial, so, say you said you want to continue and, you choose yes.
Mm-hmm.
It says hello again, you want to continue. And if I choose yes again, it says goodbye. How do I keep it going?
You keep saying yes. You shouldn't have had it to stop. See, like if I do it now, if I run it now, let me comment. I'm going to comment this line now. Well, no. Yeah, that's okay. All right, so I'm going to run it. How many times you say after you run it 4 times it stops?
No, just that once I hit yes, the second time it stopped. It worked the first time, and the second time it said goodbye.
Oh, I don't know. Yours, because it shouldn't do that. Okay, let me come down here. Because see, watch, this one goes yes. Name. Yes. Yeah, I bet that your thing is in the wrong place, your ending. See, I can keep doing yes. As many times, it's going to keep doing it until I say in on mine.
No, it's not supposed to be flush. Print, goodbye. Oh, You're putting a space in there when you type Y. You don't have to move it down there, just do Y again. That's right.
Oh,
Yeah, so you were putting a space
Okay.
in there, and so it was saying it's not equal to Y, because
Gotcha.
it was seeing space Y.
thank you.
Okay, so that's the simple ones that, and if you want to see, I went from the beginning of that unit in that video that's already up there. So that's what is talked about right here. And now this one is what I went over today. So let's start here. Understanding the loop in a program's main logic. Now you remember early on, I think it was chapter 3, we talked about flowcharts that were going to be like a template for every program you have, that they're all going to have this one loop, which is called the mainline program loop. And it's a loop that asks you, do you have somebody else, another job that you want to run all the time? So it's called the mainline logic. And let me go back up here, make sure. Okay, so the flowchart and pseudocode segments in figure 5-4 contain the 3 steps that should occur in every properly functioning loop. You must provide a starting value for the variable that will control the loop. You must test the loop control variable to determine whether the loop body executes. And within the loop, you must provide a way to alter the loop control variable. So in chapter 2, I knew it was for the back, you learned that the mainline logic of many business programs follows a standard outline that consists of what they call housekeeping tasks, which usually what housekeeping is if you're writing out a report, the heading for it sometimes is in there. If you're getting your first input, that's done in there. So those are just in every program, then a loop that repeats, and then the finishing task. So the 3 crucial steps that occur in any loop also occur in the standard mainline logic. So every program that we write has this main, it's kind of like the table of contents of the whole program, because it's without the detail. It's just every program is going to have housekeeping task, and then a loop that repeats, and then the ending task. That's in every program. So figure 5-6 shows the flowchart for the mainline logic of the payroll program that you saw in figure 2-8, which was back in chapter, this was back in chapter 2. We had this program. And so back then we just said, we're going to do this, but we really didn't learn much about the loop. So now what we're going to do is figure 5-6 points out the 3 loop controlling steps. So in this case, the 3 steps, which initializing, testing, and altering, those 3 things are done to the loop control variable, but they're in different modules in the main logic. So the steps all occur in the correct places, however, showing that the mainline logic uses a standard and correct loop. So this was the payroll program. And when we write in Python, one thing that's a little different is that in Python, we don't usually have all these declarations at the top. And if we put all these declarations at the top and we make a call to housekeeping and it says output report heading, well, look, report heading was a constant over here inside of the mainline logic. So we would have to pass it, right? So what is more logical in Python to do is in each one of these housekeeping, detail loop, and end job, whatever constants you use in those functions, just declare them in that function. And we're going to do that here. We're going to write, I'll write this one instead of, because I've got the other one already coded that I can give to y'all that we did in the other class. So on this one, what they're doing is they're saying, we need all these variables, which if you were coding in C++ or Java or COBOL or any of those, you would have to declare every variable that you're going to use in the whole program at the top. It's just that Python, remember in Python, if we need name to be a string, we do it right when we're printing it out. We don't do it at the top, right? Which we could do that. But the way, so we're going to take these variables that we're using and we're going to put them in the exact functions. But just to explain this portion of the flow chart, this is a payroll program. And so the housekeeping is going to be where they output the header, and then the control variable for this whole mainline logic is the name. Because if the name is quit, then if they've put XXX in instead of name, when we ask for input, we're going to say, please enter a name or XXX to quit. But to start out with, they're going to set the value of this constant quit to all X's, so that if somehow we get into here, if the user doesn't put a name in, it's already going to have X's in it and it's going to drop right out, right? So it's going to initialize that constant to all X's. And then this is the end line or the end of the report. So this particular mainline logic says housekeeping, and it has that step of initialize inside the housekeeping. Then we have the test of the loop right here. And then in detail loop is where we alter the variable, control variable that controls how many times we're going to go through this mainline logic loop, right? I see?
That one more time?
Sure. Okay, so we have to have all three steps, right? Initialize, test, and alter. And so what we have is the initialize is inside housekeeping, and then the test is in the mainline logic, and the altering step is in the detail loop. So in this case, our three steps are done in three different modules. And normally that's how it will be done, okay? You will normally alter your loop inside the detail because you want to know at the bottom of it, do I have another one that I want to go through again? Okay, so we need to alter it at the end of the loop. So we could alter it right out here on this branch that loops up, or this flow line, but it makes more sense to put it, see here at the bottom of the detail, it asks for input again, right? And then once it gets the input, it returns back up to the bottom of detail loop, comes around and says, do I have a name that's XXX? If I don't, then let's go back through the loop again. Let's input the gross. Let's calculate the deductions, calculate the net, output, name, gross, deduction, and net, and then input the name again and come back up. And when the user enters XXX and has no more employees to calculate their payroll, then it's going to quit and go to end of job. End of job simply says output inline, which inline is end of report. That's all it says. Okay. So y'all have PyCharm open? We're gonna code this from this flow chart. Okay. So we're gonna use and while y'all's getting that open, let's answer these two truths and a lie. It says using a loop control variable to make a while loop execute correctly, a loop control variable must be set to 0 before entering the loop. Does it always have to be 0? No, because if what we set should continue to, we set it to Y or something like that. So it depends on what the control variable is. If it's a count, though, I think, Brianna, if it's a count, then normally you do want to initialize it to 0. Okay, so we'll put false. So that means the next two are true, right? It's all about, these three questions are exactly about initialize, the test loop. You must have, to make a while loop execute correctly, a loop control variable should be tested before entering the loop body, and that's true. And then to make a while loop execute correctly, the body of the loop must take some action that alters the value of the loop control variable. And that one's true also. All right, so we're gonna look, and I'll probably have to flip back and forth to that pseudocode, because we're gonna use that pseudocode and flowchart, whichever you can see better, but I'll probably go off of the, let's see, they don't have the exact pseudocode in here. Okay, that was my other one. All right, so I should have my PyCharm open. Anybody having any trouble with PyCharm? Everybody's okay with it on your top? I have one student that was having trouble. So we're gonna create a new Python file, and I'm gonna name this one payroll. And actually, when we do this one in class, you'll be able to, you can upload it or the other Sentinel value one, whichever one in that spot. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the actual declarations up here. And the thing that's going to be different is that in the declarations, I'm not going to put any of these variable names because Python doesn't require that. But the constants I'm going to need, I will need them in different modules, right? And I don't want to have to pass them into functions because I don't want to mess with that right now. So what I want to do is I want to declare the constants that are needed at the top of each function. So we're going to do the mainline logic first. Oops, I did not mean that. So we're going to go to the mainline logic. Oops, I didn't mean that either. Come on. Ooh, come on. What are you doing? There we go. Okay, so I'm going to put a comment here that says payroll program, okay? And I'm going to tell that this is a demo of a, what are we going to use, XXX? So it would be an indefinite loop, right? And so this one, I'm going to go down, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the mainline program first. So I'm going to say mainline loop, because that's what this is. That's what they called it in the book, right? So I'm going to have a declaration in here, but I'm only going to use one in the main line. Let's look. So what do you think that we need to, why did I do that? Come on. Well, it's not working right. Let's get it back. Okay, so in here in my declarations, which one of these constants do I need down here in my main portion of the program? Okay, quit. Report heading actually isn't, is it in detail loop? Where is it at? Is it used up? It's used here. So it's going to go inside of housekeeping. So the only one I believe we need is the quit.
And inline?
Inline's in the job.
Oh, in the job.
Okay, so we're going to go back and do, so we have to have one constant declared. So this time that constant is quit. So I'm going to say quit equals, and why do I have to put the XXX in quotes? It's a string, and for it to compare correctly, then I have to make it a string. So I'm going to initialize, so I'm declaring that quit's going to start out with all X's until I ask the user for input, right? Okay, so next part, oops, the next part of my program after my declarations is the main loop. Let's see, main loop. You don't have to put all these comments. I just think it helps somewhat to know. I don't know why it did that. That's, I'm glad you saw that. It doesn't need to be there. Okay. All right, so we've got that declaration up there. The very first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a call to housekeeping. Right? We don't have that function created yet, but we're going to do the main right now. So we go to housekeeping, and that's where we're going to initialize the variable quit, right? Or the names. So we're going to say while name, or is that what it is? Is it name, or is that what we're asking for? I may get it confused with that other one that we did. Yeah, name. Okay. Okay, so while name is what? How am I going to test this loop?
Input name.
Well,
Name is not equal to.
Right. How do we do not equal in Python? Exclamation and the equals.
Oh,
While name is not equal to what do we want to keep looping?
XXX.
Yeah, and so what is XXX called as a constant?
Quit.
Quit. So I'm going to say while it's not equal to quit, and then a colon goes there, and I'm going to put a comment here that says test. Oops, I did the wrong thing. Test. And this up here is where my initialize step was. Going to be inside there, right? Okay, so next, after what do I want to do inside my loop? That's the part that is the detail loop, right? So I want to make a call to detail loop. So I don't have to know what's in it yet. I just want to know that I want to make a call to detail loop. After I get done with detail loop, I'm done with my loop. And I don't have to do an end while. So where's my mainline logic? There it is. So after the detail loop, it'll go back up and it'll test again. And when it's ready to go out, the only thing else I have to do is end a job, right? So I'm going to create another. So inside my detail loop is where the alter is, right? Okay, so here is where my end of job goes. So that's my mainline logic. That'll work with every program as long as you make it generic. Your variable name, your control variable name could change depending upon what the program logic is about, right? But otherwise, it should be the same. Any questions about that so far? Everybody okay with that? So that one, it actually won't run yet because we don't have a name to test, right? We haven't done an input statement. Can you see that back there, Brianna? Is it big enough? Okay. Ethan, okay. Okay, so let's go to create our first function. And so this first function is going to be the housekeeping. So I'm putting a comment here. And then how do I start a function? Remember? What's the keyword?
Oh,
DEF for define. Define, and I need to spell it just like my call down there is, housekeeping, and the colon goes on the defines, but not on the call. Okay, so what's inside housekeeping in my flowchart over there?
Report heading.
Report heading. So that means I need to have a declaration, right? Declaration inside here is going to be, what was it called? Output,
Output heading.
report heading. Oh,
Report heading. Report underscore heading. All in caps.
All in caps because it's a constant, right? Report underscore heading. And it's equal to what? Payroll report, right? Is that what they said? Okay, payroll report. Okay, so there's my declarations. And so now all I have to do is also ask, oh, I have to print it out, don't I? So I have to say print report heading. And then I have to get my initialize variable, control variable. So I have to say name, and actually there's one thing that I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to return this. So I have to say name. I'm going to call it just N so that I can call it name in the main program. N equals input. Please enter an employee name. You didn't have to put all that if you don't want to. I just did it. Okay. Please enter an employee name, and it's going to go in the variable N. But when I return, if I don't return it to the called function, then it will go away. So what else do I have to do? I say return in, but what do I have to do down in my call? Good. I have to have a variable, but so I'm going to call this one name because that's what I originally called it, right? So N will, whatever the value of N is, it's going to dump into name when I make the call to housekeeping, right? Everybody follow? Because remember, this variable name, when the function ends, the program would say, I don't know what N is when you get down to main. But if I take this value, I'm saying set name equal to, just like I do in input, I say set N equal to, make a call to the built-in function called input and print this out, and it's going to dump it in N. So down here, I'm saying make a call to my function housekeeping. When it gets done, whatever you return, put it in this variable called name. So now I have something in name to compare to quit, right? So now I come down and I say, okay, this still won't do anything until I create the other function, another function called detail loop. So this one, define detail loop. Oops. Now, one thing I've got to check on, do I need name in detail loop? I know I've got declarations here in the,
Yes,
it does?
it's the alter at the end.
Okay, so that means that when I call detail loop, I'm going to have to pass name up there to be used. So up here, I'm just going to call it N1, okay? Okay, so what other do I have some constants that I need in detail loop? What was some declarations that I didn't use yet? Okay, so up there in my declarations, I have a rate constant, right? So I need to say rate equals 0.05, 0.25, right? Okay, so here we'll say constant rate equals 0.25. Okay, is there another constant that is used? Yeah, column heading, right? No, column heading should have been in housekeeping. I'll have to go back and put it in there. Okay, so I don't need any of these others because gross, deduct, and net, I don't have to initialize them. I can initialize them all to 0 to make sure there's no garbage in them sitting out there if I want to. But I also need to go back and put in column heading, name, gross. Okay, so column heading needs to go inside of housekeeping. So I need to say right here. which I know it seems useless to have a constant for this purpose. This is for, so you'll know how to do it when you do need this. Okay, so then it says name, what was the next? Gross deductions. Okay. And so then once I print report heading, then I would say print. Oops, didn't spell it right. Still didn't. Column heading. Okay, so now I've got that in there, but I didn't finish my detail loop. Okay, so my detail loop, I've got rate, and I could go ahead and use these and say gross equals 0, net equals 0, and I think they just call it deduct, right? Equals 0. So now all of those are initialized in those declarations. And that way it works for every other program, except for you got to put whether it's the data type in other programs. Okay, so now what does it say in the flowchart to do next? In the flowchart, in the detail loop, we're in the detail loop. So the input gross. So here's where we're going to go to do that. We'd say gross equals input. Oh, we probably want to make it a float, right? So we want to come out here and say float. It may give us an error up here if I don't put 0.0. Float input, enter gross pay. And then what's the next one it asks? See, in the flow chart next is the calculation. Deduct equals gross times rate. So I'll go in the detail loop, and I'm going to put deduct. Oops, haven't had a loop yet. Deduct. Oops.
I think you're missing a parentheses in the first right.
Oh, you are right. Okay, so deduct equals gross times rate. And then I have to calculate something else. Is it gross or the net? Net, oops. Net equals gross minus deduct. Okay, so I probably need to go up here and say 0.0 and let's see. All right, and what is that the last part of the detail loop? What's at the bottom?
Output, name, gross, deduction, net.
Okay, so it'd say print name. It's going to squish them all together if I don't.
Actually, you don't have name in the detail loop.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
We passed it. Only it's called N1. You're right. It's not called name. It's called N1 inside here. We actually can print it out in the bot. Well, no, we do need to print it out in here. Okay, name. If we put comma, then I want to put a space in there or something. because it's not going to work out right if I don't. I think I need to put plus, not comma. I can't remember. Maybe comma will work. We'll see. Comma plus, what's the next one is gross, right? So that's going to be a string now. And then I'm going to say comma then I'll say comma plus and see. Oh, I don't think it needs, it's probably not going to work with that comma n plus. What does that say? Class string does not define, so the plus. Oh, it says no, not to use that on strings. Guess that's right. Okay, so then after that we want string. Is it net that prints out next or deductions? Deductions, okay. Okay. And comma, and the last one is net. See, do I need one more? There's no, just the one should work if I've got it set up right. Okay, and then there's one more thing that I have to do in the detail loop. What is it?
Did you just put a string for a net?
Oh. Okay, so now I want to be able to, yes, I always have to remember what time is class in. Okay, so did I do net equals gross minus deduct? Did I get that in there?
Yep.
Okay. Output that, and then there is my alter, right? So I have to ask for the name again. Oh, gotcha. Come on. Okay, so at the bottom of the detail loop, I want to ask for the name. And if I ask for it there, I'm going to have to return it back, right? So that means in my detail loop, I have to also put, we can still call it name, I believe. Let me see, name equals, and we're, let's see. I'm not sure if that'll work like that. I probably am going to have to come up with another name. We'll see if this works. What we did last time, I remember now, is instead of putting the alter inside the loop, we put it right after you leave the loop. I'll show you right after, just before it's going to test it again. So I made the call to the function. Then we can put name equals input, just like we did earlier. Input, where did I put that? Come on. Okay, so at the bottom of the loop, it's going to ask for another name, and then it's going to come back and test and see, oh, it should actually be saying, please enter an employee name or XXX to quit. And that should be up at the top too. Should say or XXX to So now we only have one more function to make. The end of job. So what goes at the end of job? DF. It just says end of report, right? So we just say print end of report. That's it. So actually our alter ended up right here. So we only have one loop, the mainline logic loop, right? In this one, we're going to go over one that's a little more complicated here. Or I'm going to give it to you where we don't have time to work it. Okay, so please enter an employee name or XXX to quit. So let's see if it runs. Has anybody tried it yet? Let's see. Run. Oh, what did I name this one? Payroll. There it is. Ooh, print it out. Payroll report. Please enter an employee name or XXX to quit. So I can put enters gross pay. I'll say 300.00. And there it is. Printed it out, right? Doesn't look so nice because of my enter. What we're going to learn to do is we're going to learn to build text files. Did y'all do it? Please enter an employee name. So now I can enter another employee name. I'll say James Jones. Enter gross pay. Let's do 350.00. There, printed it out. So now if I'm done, I can say XXX and it quit. Everybody's work? No?
End of job is having some trouble.
Okay.
End of job is not defined.
Let me make sure you can see all this code instead of mine. Yeah. Let's see.
Okay.
I think you can see all of it now. Okay, who's in working? Who wants help?
I have.
Okay, Grover, right?
It's
Yours is. Did you see it? What's wrong? What area is it? It says 136. And you're in, oh. Your past name, which is right. Up here, you gotta put something. So here, where you say, again, you guys. Because you got dump in there. Got it? Okay. See it, read? Can you see it? All right. So we don't have very much longer left. So let me show you the one thing that I got to in the other class. And so I will put this other one in there. But right over here in the rest of the chapter, the next part of the chapter is doing nested loops. And just like nested ifs, you would have an if or an if then else inside the yes portion of the if. Well, in a nested loop, you actually can have an inner loop inside the outer loop. So every program is going to have that one that we just did, the mainline logic. But then most programs are going to have inside the detail loop another loop. And so this particular one, if you saw these quiz sheets that were printed out, in these quiz sheets, the outer loop, or actually the mainline loop, is going to just ask, do you have another quiz to print out? What's another quiz name? Because what's the name of this first quiz? Chapter 1, right? So if the user enters chapter 1, then there is 2 loops here. The first loop is going to print out these part numbers, and there's 5 of them. And then inside, every time it prints out part 1, we don't want to go to part 2 until it's printed 1, 2, and 3. That's the inner loop. And then it'll print out part 2, but it's still inside detail loop, going and going. So here is the flow chart. Now see the mainline loop? It's still the same, right? In our flow chart as the one we just did for payroll. But what's inside the detail loop and the housekeeping is different. But look at the detail loop. Detail loop starts here. It says output the quiz name to my report, set part counter equal to 1. So that's my initialized step of my outer loop inside detail. And then here's my test. And then here it's coming in, and look, there's a nested loop inside there, because here's the initial step for it, the test. And it does this on that loop. And then look there's the alter for question, but it hasn't altered part yet because it's got to print those 3 question numbers. And then it goes back up and it says increment part counter, and then go back up and test is part counter greater than or equal to parts. Well, what parts is a constant up here that we defined as 5. Right? So what I'm going to give you, let me go back to PyCharm. If you watch the one from this morning, I'll post it out there, but I'm also going to give this to you. So it was called Quiz Sheet. So this one is Quiz Sheet. And Quiz Sheet, you'll notice inside detail loop, my function called detail loop, I've got these declarations, and I've got, this is my outer while loop, this is my nested while loop. And so I didn't get to end a job. I typed in end a job, but let me put this in here. But then it says print end of quiz sheet. I'll call it quiz sheet. Okay, so this one will do what that flow chart is. So I'm going to take this one, I'll save it, and I will put it in, where'd it go? Save as, why is it saying that? Save as quiz sheet, okay. All right, and so what your, oh, it's not doing that. I hope it lets me save it. Yeah, it will. Okay, so I'm going to put that one the code for it, I'm not going to put it as a PY file because I want you to type it in and I want you to make it run. And that one, there'll be, that's the one that you can put in for points, okay? Because it'll be right there for you, but I want you to see the nested loop. I want you to compare that with the flow chart that's in MindTap and make sure you understand where this code came from. But we did it the same way that we did the payroll. The difference is that we had to make two. This is the outer loop, and you can see it ends right there where I alter part counter, right? And this was the alter of the inner loop. So here's the initialize step, the test loop, the alter. Of the outer loop, here's the initialize step, the test, and the alter. And I didn't put that down there. Let me put that down there.
So we had to do both. Quiz
You
sheet
had-
and sentinel one.
Yes, and so then it will print out a quiz sheet just like you saw, okay? I think I had we have a minute. If y'all need to go, you can go. I'm gonna see, I had a run error in mine earlier. Let me see if I can get it to work. Oh, I know what happened. I put this way down. Enter a quiz name, okay. So I would say chapter 1. Yeah, I thought I had an error in there. Let me see. Where does it say? Detail loop, line 32. So I was going to go home and fix it before I posted the video. Okay, it's line 32. Print string. Oh, it doesn't like this. Expected type. Oh, because I put plus, I think. Okay, let me do this. String counter, comma, and this should also be a string, I believe. I'll get it right before I post it, but oh, wait a minute. String line. Oh, it didn't need that. It just needed a comma, I think. Let's see. Okay, let me see if that works. Okay, down here. Oh, it didn't do all of it. It did part 1. Still doesn't like line 32. I think it's still that same one. 19. Print. Decoding to string. Need 8 bytes like object int found. Okay, so which one did it find that was an int? Print. Doesn't like something. I'm going to take that string off. And now it should let me do plus. Let me see. Or is it still saying that's an error? Can't tell. Down here. Nope, it's still giving me that. Unsupported. Sure, Grove.
Were you able to grade the test?
Oh, you got in late. I told them about that. I'm going to, there's on Monday's video, I go over the test so you can look at it and see if it's right. And I will get them graded before the weekend.
Oh.
But if you look at that Monday's video, it shows the correct answer.
Yeah, I looked at it. Mine ran just fine. I just messed up one of the print statements. I guess I copy and pasted the wrong one.
Oh.
For 3.9 being above, you're supposed to get honor roll, and I had a message in there that your excellent student or something.
Oh, so you had it messed up.
Yeah,
Okay, a
like,
little
it
bit.
runs